Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world with me, George Galloway.
And me, Gayatri.
The world's greatest saxophone player is something to be. He's not an African-American, as you might expect him to be, never sat by the Mississippi, absorbing jazz and the blues. In fact, he came upon these genres in the only record shop, as we used to call them, in the unlikely neighborhood of Tel Aviv.
That's right. He's an Israeli Jew who even served in the Israeli army. He saw the light politically in occupied Lebanon when he saw a row of small concrete kennels in which he imagined the soldiers kept their Alsatians, before discovering it was where the soldiers kept their Palestinian victims, those that they hadn't killed. He went on the road and never turned back to the Zionism of his youth.
He's politically fascinating, artistically he's a genius. And he's here. Welcome, Gilad Atzmon, to the Sputnik. I want to get some artistic points out of the way because you're too modest to do it. You are on the new Pink Floyd album. For 20 years you've been a blockhead, by which I mean the wonderful English band, formerly fronted by Ian Drury, the Blockheads. How much of your life is occupied by music nowadays, and how much by politics?
To start with, I'm not engaged in politics at all. I've never been a member of any party or anything as such. I'm concerned with humanist matters, and I write about what does it mean to live amongst others. To your question, I'm playing every night. I'm recording a lot. I'm touring a lot constantly. And in between, I read and write.
This is your new album.
This is my new album.
The Whistleblower.
Yeah,
Tell us about it.
It's just about to come out in a few days, in the beginning of January.
Well, I haven't heard this album yet, but I've heard you play.
Yeah.
You really are a genius. You are going to teach me to play the saxophone, and maybe on a later edition of the Sputnik, we'll show us doing a rap. You wrote a book which I read with some trepidation because there's been a big job done on you to paint you in a really negative way.
Yeah.
And I was enthralled, both of us were. Yeah. In fact, and it was the early days of our marriage, I used to read her a chapter of your book every night. We went to bed thinking
I think this is what I recommend all young couples, you know, is that read Gilad Atzmon before you go to sleep.
It's a sort of contraception. It was called The Wandering Who, which is a fantastic title, and titles are really important in books. Tell us what led to the book and what it's about.
I really think that we have been misled for quite a long time in our understanding of Zionism, Israel, the work of the lobby, and so on and so on and so on. For quite a while, I argue that if Israel defines itself as the Jewish state and decorates its airplanes and tanks with Jewish symbols, the first thing that we have to do is to try to understand what is Jewishness. What are the relationships between Judaism, Jewishness, the Jew? What are the relationships between these three and Zionism? These are fundamentals. Now, for quite a while, because of the domination of a lot of good Jews, let's say, within the left, we were prevented from going there. We were only allowed to talk about Zionism or colonialism. Zionism is a misleading notion. Zionism, from Israeli perspectives, died in 1948. Zionism was the promise to form a Jewish state in Zion, i.e. Palestine. Once this state was formed, from an Israeli perspective, the project was gone. For American Jews in Brooklyn or here in Golders Green, it is still a very vivid concept. But from Israelis, it wasn't Zionism that motivated us or pushed us forward. We were Israeli patriots. We actually despised the so-called diaspora Jew, whom we regarded as very weak people. Now, apartheid is a very misleading concept. Apartheid is an exploitive, racist system. Israel doesn't want to exploit the Palestinians, it wants them out. Colonialism speaks about relationship between a mother state and a settler state. Israel is a settler state, but where is the mother? Who is the mother? We are using a lot of terminology that is very misleading. I realized long time ago that it is the Jewish identity politics that drives the Jewish state. I faced a lot of opposition, but now, just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we saw that the Israeli cabinet approved the Jewish national bill, the Israeli national bill that determines the primacy of Jewishness in the Israeli state. And those who, by the way,
democracy.
For sure. And those who, by the way, like Tzipi Livni, now she becomes a leftist.
Yeah.
Until 2 weeks ago, she was a war criminal. You know, it's like, you know, and we are very forgiving. Those who oppose the national bill, they don't oppose the essentialist gist of it. They just say, we don't need it because we know that we are the Jewish state. We don't have to write it down.
Yeah, default.
We see now something very interesting in Israel. Something very, very interesting that I'm something that shocks me, and you know, because obviously I'm an anti-Zionist, but what is so fascinating in Israeli politics at the moment is that it's actually the ultra-Zionists who insist to be truthful to themselves. They say, we will go for this national bill. We understand the consequences. We understand that it's going to jeopardize our foreign affairs and so on and so on. But this is what we are. We are Jews, and we want this state to be the Jewish state against all odds. And then we see the Jewish left trying to divert the attention from the factuality of the Jewish state. This is what I tried to do in The Wandering Jew, and I'm very happy. I was very happy to face so much outrage because it only proved that I had something to say.
You are Jewish, whether you resign it or not.
I'm not a Jew anymore. This is something that very important.
I'm not sure you can resign it, but your parents were strong supporters of Zionism and of the embryonic
I'm from
Israeli
a right-wing
state.
family.
Yeah, and you served in the Israeli army.
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult to pin the label anti-Semite on you, as they try to do on people like me, when nothing could be further from the truth. But here's the...
But you're right. Every time I was called an anti-Semite or there's a suggestion that The Wandering Jew is an anti-Semite text, I said, all right, let's stop for a second. Just tell me, where did I speak about Jews as a race, as a people, as ethnicity? I don't even talk about Judaism. I actually point at the very peculiar fact in Jewish history that during those hundreds of years of rabbinical Judaism, Jews have never been involved as a collective in any genocide. It's actually the process of secularism in the Jewish world that introduced a very interesting and very devastating developments in Jewish culture. So we see Zionism is just one aspect of it. Some will talk about the predominance of Jews within the neoconservative school of thought. Others would talk about predominance of Jews within the Bolshevik revolution and so on and so on. Something very, very interesting happened at that period of history that starts with emancipation, late 19th century, and we are within academia. You cannot even tackle this issue scholarly because you may find yourself being attacked or smeared or abused by some Jewish lobbies.
Or in my case, physically attacked. Let me finish with this point. The man who attacked me converted to Judaism. And now when he's released from prison, he's going to go and live in Israel, where he has an automatic right of settlement, citizenship. There's a fund that's going to fund his life there. Yeah, a birthright, except in his case, he was a Christian. until very recently. He has no genetic connection to the land of Palestine at all.
By the way, but not only that you are right, and your attack, the way in which you were attacked, and the lameness of the reaction of the British media, I found it totally devastating. By the fact that the guy is a converted is not and was so vile is not very surprising. You know, we hear about ISIS all the time, that a lot of the combatants there are converts from Europe. What I'm saying, and this was my first reaction to your to this vile attack on you, is that we have to step up. MI5, MI6, police, Metropolitan Police or whatever, must step up their surveillance and espionage within those Jewish communities. How many British Jews or American Jews served in Gaza in the last 3 months in the summer and were involved in this massacre? You know?
And if one Palestinian or one Muslim had gone to fight
Syria
for the Palestinian side, they'd already be
so
behind bars.
these issues must be addressed. And I'm not working in university. I'm completely independent. I'm not an MP. I'm basically a jazz musician. I'm free to say and do what I like to do.
Speaking about your jazz music, you mentioned in the beginning that you are not political, but you have very articulate political views. And I was just wondering, how does it influence your music? Does it affect some audience? Would they boycott you because of your stance?
There was obviously a lot of attempts to boycott me, but I'm a nice guy. And I'm charming, so when they tried to call me an anti-Semite, it was slightly pathetic because I had 3 Jews in the band. And when they called me a racist, they had a problem because I had a black guy in the band. You know, it just doesn't. They never managed to stop my career. For me, to be a jazz musician is to develop this ability to reinvent yourself every night. It's pretty much the opposite of a politician, although you're very good at it, I must admit, which is genius.
Gilad, we're going to have to continue this another time because we've run over. You're a fascinating guy, as I said at
Thank
the
you so much,
beginning.
man.
Keep blowing that
It's great
horn.
to spend time with you. I wish we could do it
Thank you,
on a regular basis.
Coming up after the break, Manchester is a long way from Motown, Detroit, Michigan. And Motown singer and DJ Miss H is a long way from your archetypal Berry Gordy starlet. Continuing the theme of seeing the light and tripping the light. Fantastic. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sputnik. Music has charm to soothe the savage beast, said William Congreve in the 17th century. It certainly soothed me in the 1960s when I discovered Tamla Motown and its edgier cousin, Stax Records.
Otis Redding, Marvin Gaye, Little Stevie Wonder, The Supremes, The Temptations, Jackson 5, and also, lest we forget, Sam and Dave, Junior Walker, and the All-Stars. If Manchester is a long way from Motown, how far distance is today's X Factor's conveyor belt of manufactured music from Berry Gordy's Soul Factory?
Perhaps not as far as you think. Joining us now to discuss the distance travelled is Miss H, formerly from a strict religious background, now a real soul sister, singer and DJ. Miss H, thanks for joining us. It's my thesis that Motown was exactly the same as the X Factor. You had a maestro, Berry Gordy in the case of Motown, Simon Cowell in the case of X Factor, who put people together artificially who'd never met each other before as bands and told them what they should release. And everyone was happy because the world danced, the artists made a fortune. Berry Gordy made the biggest fortune of all. Do you agree with that?
I think that in the way it's engineered is probably similar, but I think that the complete difference in Motown and the style of singers, the fashion, the words in the, you know, the lyrics of the songs are completely different to some of the things we see coming through on the X Factor. I think, personally, my humble opinion, is sometimes the music we see on X Factor or the show itself is popular because we're told to think it's popular. You know, with all the exposure that it gets and all the hype that's on the show and the way it tugs at your heartstrings, things like that. But I think looking at the show, there's a lot of engineering and a bit of manipulation of people's emotions.
This year's 2014 X Factor, Ben Haenow, he's a decent fellow with a half-decent voice, but he defeated in the final ballot 10 million people having voted, by the way. So it raised a lot of money, that ballot. Fleur, a black singer with phenomenal talent. I mean, I'll predict that 12 months from now, she'll be a worldwide superstar. But Ben Haenow, a rather ordinary act, defeated her. I take the view, you may or may not agree, that she lost because she was black, because she had a black family, although a white father, and because her music was black music. And in a poll of 10 million, although there will be millions who like black music, that's not going to be a winner. What's your view?
Well, if that was the case, I would be absolutely horrified. There's an actor from the IT crowd I noticed in the Mirror paper said that the British public are quite discriminative against black people, which surprised me. It was the first time, really, that I'd looked into this.
On this subject, I'm interested in it. You're white, but you're a soul singer. You're a Motown singer. You're a Motown DJ. You play black music.
Yep.
The people you're playing it to and singing to, are they black or are they white? And how do you explain it if they're white?
There's a mix, really. I think the people that I'm drawn to and who are drawn to me like the same kind of genre of music, R&B, hip-hop, soul, Motown. I even get Northern Soul requests, so I've got loads of that. I think, really, without offending anyone, I think it's the best kind of music. It's got the best rhythm, the best vocals. I just prefer it more than the average pop that you get. And I really don't like the average pop scene, really.
So, well, the origins of Motown are, of course, in the blues, in jazz, banks of the Mississippi, the urban wasteland of the ghetto, and so on. I'm wondering how that's so attractive to and appealing to people like us who don't come from there or that background. We were lucky enough to be on the right side of the tracks. This music is from the wrong side of the tracks. What's the appeal?
I think because they sing with so much feeling and the lyrics, you know, they really grab you. I understand that Motown and rap as well, the earlier rap does date back to the times of oppression and domestic violence, things like that, and, you know, wanting to be released from the oppression. And I think with some people who understand that, they really, really do appreciate that kind of music.
Well, I was there first time around. I would have been in the dance halls around 67, 68. And this wave, I mean, talk about a hit factory. There were hundreds of hit records coming out of Motown at that time. So it was a soundtrack of my youth. But you weren't born then, and yet you still love that same music. Tell us why.
Well, as you said, it's got soul that speaks to your heart. And even though I take your point of the X Factor and Motown being similar music industries, factories, it's, as she said, as Miss H says, the soul that gets through it, that gets transferred to the listener, is completely different from nowadays, from as to the Motown kind.
But you know, this concept, Simon Cowell, people think it's Simon Cowell's concept of choosing entirely disparate people, putting them together in a band, first of all, has always been done. Secondly, was done not just by black music impresarios, but white. The Monkees, for example, who weren't actually a bad band, They were four entire strangers who people were invited to write in to join a band called the Monkees. And they wrote in from all over the country, the United States, the world. They became big stars. Or One Direction. One Direction had never set eyes on each other before Simon Cowell put them together. Now they're the biggest band in the entire world. And Ronnie Wood of the Rolling Stones was playing with them on stage on the X Factor final. And guess what? One Direction are becoming quite a great band. You surprised at that?
I'm not surprised because I do see a lot of people that are fans, especially in the younger generation, and I think they are quite suitable for maybe the younger generation. You know, 10-year-olds,
Ronnie Wood's
12-year-olds.
older than me, but he was drawn to appear with them because he could see that they've kind of got something.
Is that really the case, or is that just an engineered media stunt?
Well, that's a good question. I think I've got enough respect for Ronnie Wood's integrity that he wouldn't have played with them if he doesn't need the money.
Yeah.
He's been with the Rolling Stones for 20 years. They're playing for £1 million each per gig. I think he saw something in them, which means that Simon Cowell saw something in them that turned out to be right.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how you got into this groove of Motown and soul music, and how your friends and family responded to that?
I think from a very young age, I've always been around musical family. My brother used to play saxophone. My older brother used to love his music too. My sister always used to play things like Whitney Houston as she was getting ready to go out, things like that. Also, you know, growing up, I had a really good chance, an opportunity to mix with a diverse group of people. So I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of music, and the main kind of music was Motown, soul, that kind of thing. And I just developed a love for it. And obviously looking up to people that were older than me and the kind of music they liked, I think that had a measure of influence. And also, since I've been singing, a lot more recently, my partner, he's a major lover of soul and R&B, hip-hop, and he was the one really that pushed me into singing more soul and Motown, and since then it's become quite a success for me. Yeah.
Give us your website address so people could check you out.
missh.co.uk.
missh.co.uk. There'll be a lot of people hitting it right
you.
now. And now it's your turn to tell us what you think through the portals of social media. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, talking about music, Motown versus X Factor, it has sparked a lot of debate, let's put it that way. Brendan Hall says both are about product. Diana Ross and the Supremes. Talent does not mean anything, nor did it ever. You want real music? Go and see a live band in a small club.
Well, all acts start out as live bands in small clubs. And of course, it's a product. Everything in capitalist society is a product. This television show is a product. It doesn't invalidate it. The fact that one way or another, you've got to pay to see it, and it's got to be marketed. So I don't buy that criticism, I must say.
What about Roy G. Simond? There's so much cynicism here. Pop music is what it is. It is what is popular on the day. Mozart wrote pop music. Motown was great, and X Factor reflects that. But what is best is totally subjective. And Lucy Pirelli says, the message is what once took talent and years of hard work can now be achieved overnight with auto-tune and the right hairstyle. I, for one, have got one.
Well, you've got the perfect Ronette hairstyle. The Ronettes, of course, were entirely manufactured by Berry Gordy and under the direction of a very crazy producer, Phil Spector, who's now serving life for murder.
Yeah, I know, even though he created that fantastic
the wall of sound. Yeah, I mean, these are all products. I don't know why people are being so sniffy about that. There's one thing I'm going to say without fear of contradiction. On the X Factor, they have Motown nights where the acts perform Motown classics. 50 years from now, nobody will be doing garage classics or trance classics or rap. I know you like rap. Or rap classics. Well, Motown has lived, will live. New genre will fall by the wayside. I may sound like a grumpy old man, but that's my point of view.
Well, let's close it with that then.
Which, alas, means that's the end of the show.
You can stay in touch with us on Twitter on RT_Sputnik, and on Facebook you can like us on Sputnik on Russia Today. Goodbye from me, Gayatri.
And from me, George Galloway. It's been marvellous.